Communist Party?
Chinese的不动国水平解析. Now, the strategy is to say that China is capitalist.
There are some commentators who claim that the People's Republic of China does not have a capitalist system. If we talk about self-perception, the Chinese Communist Party governs its country with socialism with Chinese characteristics. In today's video, we are going to analyze the economic and political system of China part by part and determine how much Marxism exists within the great Asian power. Are you interested? Let's go. Then, stay until the end of the video. Oh, Carlitos Marx, you left and inspired many people, but you also generated the contempt of so many others. I'd bet anything that many of these people don't even know the basics of what you proposed in the Communist Manifesto. So, if you're one of those who praise or criticize without knowing, here's a little help for you. Remember this. Scientific socialism proposes, in a nutshell, to abolish capitalism and establish a classless society through a proletarian revolution. The proletarian is the one who gives his labor power in exchange for a salary. Among the pillars of socialism is, first, the class struggle. Marx states that the history of humanity is a history of struggle between oppressor and oppressed classes. In the case of the capitalist system, the bourgeoisie, owners of the means of production, exploit the proletariat, wage workers, oppressor and oppressed, respectively. Second, the critique of capitalism. Marx denounced that the bourgeois system alienates the worker, reducing him to a commodity and concentrating wealth in a few hands. Any resemblance to reality is purely coincidental. Competition and the cyclical crisis of capitalism would deepen the misery of the working class. 3. The proletarian revolution. Marx proposes that the proletariat, the most numerous and exploited class, must organize to overthrow the bourgeoisie through a violent revolution. This implies the abolition of private property, especially of the means of production, the expropriation of land, transferring it to the workers' state, and the centralization of services such as transportation and education. This would lead to point 4, the dictatorship of the proletariat. Marx proposes a workers' state that eliminates bourgeois remnants and redistributes wealth. That is to say, the state would disappear once social classes are eliminated, giving way to a communist society without a state, money, or exploitation. Something that hasn't even come close to happening and is closer to being a utopia. Finally, internationalism, which implies the global unity of workers at the expense of nationalism and patriotism, under the slogan, "Workers of the World, Unite." Having seen this, let's go back to China and ask ourselves, what Marxist traits does the government of the Chinese Communist Party really have today? According to the quick review we've just seen, go ahead and write in the comments which ones you see, and I'll tell you the ones I notice. First, the political monopoly of Putonghua Shuiping Ceshi, which remains the only party without free elections or multi-party competition. The Chinese state controls the judicial, legislative, and military powers. Although this is partly associated with the dictatorship proposed by Marx, we could say it relates more to Lenin's model, who advocated for a centralized state. Another similarity with Marxism is China's socialist rhetoric. Marxism is taught in schools and universities. Xi Jinping constantly uses words like these in his speeches. Common prosperity or class struggle. Although, let's be honest, this rhetoric serves more to justify state decisions than to build a real communist society. The third Marxist trait I find in the Chinese system is state planning. In strategic sectors, just as Marx proposed, the state retains control over key sectors such as infrastructure and energy, and banking. Likewise, 5-year plans are developed to guide the economy, which is a typical practice of real socialism. However, this coexists with a large private sector and market logic. Since we're talking about market logic, we should look at what capitalist elements the Chinese system has to compare, starting with the capitalist market economy. In China, there is indeed private property in the hands of big entrepreneurs and a considerable income inequality, and multi-billion-dollar companies like Alibaba, whose asset value is comparable to the gross domestic product of countries like Hungary or New Zealand. I don't know about you, but Carlitos wouldn't like this at all, since it blatantly breaks with the Marxist principle of abolishing private ownership of the means of production. When it comes to labor, China isn't that Marxist either. The working class doesn't control the means of production, and they don't even participate in free unions. Well, you can't even tweet a meme about the Chinese president. The productive system depends on cheap labor, long working hours, and union repression for a large part of the population. Don't you think that the 1.4 billion Chinese live like the TikTokers in Shanghai? Ideologically speaking, let's say the Putonghua Sweeping Cheshi wouldn't really satisfy Carlitos either. The current model produces excessive consumption, the accumulation of wealth, and individual economic success rather than class solidarity. Likewise, there is a very strong nationalism, which contrasts with Marx's idea of workers' internationalism. Let's see, tell Xi Jinping to promote Chinese workers sympathizing with Indian or American workers. In fact, you could say that nationalism is one of the pillars of Chinese education. The century of humiliation is very present in it, with the aim of seeking a vindication of their country. And they're definitely achieving it. Based on the quick analysis we've seen today, I would say that in practice, China is about 30% Marxist. You could say that it retains structural elements of socialism, such as the political monopoly of the Putonghua Sweeping Cheshi state control of key sectors, economic planning, and the official ideology, which, by the way, is not always applied in practice. On the other hand, we can attribute 70% capitalism to it, since it has a market economy. There is private property in the hands of entrepreneurs and billionaires. Mass consumption is promoted in a context of luxury culture, and labor exploitation exists. And in China, a nationalism is promoted that differs widely from the internationalist logic of Marxism. That is to say, rather than socialism with Chinese characteristics, I would call it capitalism with Chinese characteristics. Don't fool us, Deng Xiaoping. So, in my opinion, some communicators need to be more analytical, unless, of course, their ideology causes them tremendous confirmation bias. Anyway, now you tell me, what percentage of Marxism do you think exists in the system of the Asian giant?
Don't forget to leave your comment and subscribe to the channel. Also, I'll leave my social media links in the description. And in case you want to watch the new videos at the premiere and have more interaction with me, your donations on Patreon, Una Manito Net, or channel memberships are welcome. See you next time. Thank you.